Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Dundee Master of Education webinar. I'm Helen Spiropoulos, Admissions Manager at Stafford Global, and joining me this evening all the way from the UK is Dr. Richard. Good evening to you, Dr. Richard.
Good evening, everyone, and hello to you, Helen, again. Nice to see you.
Good. Well, I can see there's quite a few of you that have joined me, actually from the UAE, and I know it's quite an overcast UAE this evening. We're expecting some rain, which is quite nice in these parts of the world. And I also see that we have one or two students from Africa as well, which is great. Okay. Good. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to introduce you to Stafford Global. I'm then going to hand you over to Dr. Richard, and he'll take you through the program. And at the end of the presentation, I will have obviously looked at your questions because I'll see there's questions coming through. I will group the questions together and Dr. Richard and myself will be able to answer them. Okay, so let's get started. Stafford Global was established in 1993 and we are a resource centre for distance learning education in the Middle East. And we have partnered with 7 UK universities, one of which is the University of Dundee. And we have been with the university now for many, many years, and we really have a very good, strong partnership. Now, we do offer a variety of programs ranging from certificates to diplomas, bachelor degrees, MBAs, right through until doctorates. And we offer academic as well as administrative support. Now, the mere fact that you're actually here with us this evening means that you have been in communication with one of our experienced academic consultants. Okay, so I'm going to now hand you over to Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard will then take you through the program, and then I'll join you again towards the end of the presentation. Over to you, Dr. Richard.
Helen, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and welcome everybody else that's joined us on this webinar. I'm delighted to meet you virtually. And as Helen has said, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. And then Helen will group those together for us at the end so we can try and answer those questions. We're here to try and give you as much information as possible to help you make this important decision. So before I tell you a little bit more about the University of Dundee and the Master of Education M.Ed programme, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Richard Home, and I'm a reader or a lecturer in education studies. But I'm also a module leader and also a tutor for the Master of Education programme. So if you were to come and study with ourselves, then you would possibly have me on one of the modules or possibly as a personal tutor at some point during your studies. My own background is I've got now 20 years experience working in teaching and educational leadership and also research, and this covers everything from adult education to higher education, where I've worked for the past decade, to also working in elementary, primary, and also secondary education. My own personal interests from an academic perspective are professional learning, specifically around that professional learning of educators. But I've also got an interest in STEM subjects, that's science, technology, engineering, and maths. And some of you may be from that background yourself. I'm also a module leader on the Master of Education full-time programme for the module which covers reflective practice. And also I teach on and lead a module on innovation in education. So quite a broad range of interests there as well. So if you wanted to later find me, you can find my profile page, and it covers some of the research that I've done and also a little bit more about my background too. So I'm going to tell you first, where is Dundee? You're obviously interested in this programme as a remote programme that's delivered distance, but it's always nice for people who perhaps aren't aware of the University of Dundee just to have an idea in their minds where it is. So we've got here on the screen for you a map of the UK. You'll probably know London, which is in the southeast of England, and then Dundee is in the north, is in Scotland, and we're a short distance away from Edinburgh. Helen was just saying at the beginning there that it's quite overcast today where you are, but here it is rather cold. It's just a couple of degrees today. We had a smattering of snow last night. It's also a lovely city in the summer as well, and we've got some quite fantastic sort of cultural locations locally. Now, the reason for mentioning this is that if you chose to study with us, You might choose to visit at some point, and although you might be an online distance learner, we do have students who sometimes come to the UK maybe for a holiday, and they take the time to come and see Dundee, to visit the campus as well. And of course, you'd be free as a student to come and access the library facilities in person if you did that. And then even if you don't come during your studies, we do encourage people to come along for the graduation, which is the culmination of the studies. And every year the graduation is held on campus. We have a garden party where you can celebrate that, and sometimes people come with their friends and their family as well. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later, but I thought it'd be good to show you where Dundee is. Now, the University of Dundee, we've got a long history, and the purpose and our mission statement, I suppose, for the university is about transforming lives. And we do this locally, but also we act globally, and it's through the creation and the sharing and the application of knowledge. Now, the University of Dundee has a range of specialisms, not just education. We also have a very well established and highly respected medical school. We also deliver courses in dentistry. We have a business school and a world-renowned life sciences school as well, and we also have courses such as engineering. Now, all those courses focus in on this practical application of knowledge, but in education, in your discipline, in your field, you know that this is a real important element of what you do, making a difference to the lives of those people that you're working with, whether they're young learners, maybe they're kindergarten, nursery age, or whether they're older learners or even adult learners. So you'll be very familiar with this idea of transformation of lives. Now, at the University of Dundee, we're proud of our various awards, and over the last few years, we've been ranked one of the top 250 universities in the world. We've also featured in a top 200 universities for graduate employment rates, and I know this is really important for some people. You might have questions around this. Now, you might already be in a job, already in a profession, but it also gives you an opportunity, this course, to develop your skills, take your career to that next level. And we also ranked #1 in the Student Crowd's 5 best Scottish universities back in 2022. There's lots of other awards that we've won, and you can have a look on the university website if that's something you want to find out more about. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the University of Dundee, but I'm going to tell you now a lot more about the Master of Education, the M.Ed programme. So this programme is a programme based on the principles of reflective practice, but also it uses the principles of work-based inquiry and action research, and it's most suitable for people who are already working in an education setting. Now, you don't have to be working at this moment. You may have prior experience of working in an education setting and want to undertake master's level learning, either a postgraduate certificate, a diploma, or the full Master of Education. And it's important to note, actually, which we might have some questions on later, that the M.Ed pathway that we offer doesn't lead to qualified teacher status in UK schools. Now, just to clarify what we mean by that is there are specific courses that you can study both in England and in Scotland that will include work-based placements, which the university facilitates and assesses. Now, we don't have assessed placements as part of this course. So if you wanted to know if this particular program would qualify you to teach in the country you're working in or the region you're in, we always recommend that you double check that first. But if you've got any questions about this, Stafford Associates or the University of Dundee can give you some guidance and advice. But our advice is always that check with the government body or the registry body. But most of our students, a vast majority of students, are already working in education and they're looking at taking their career to that next level. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview now of what the M.Ed looks like. So we have a couple of options for you studying part-time. The usual route would take 3 years part-time, completing a 30 credit module each semester, and we have 2 semesters a year. But we also have a fast-track option, which would allow you to complete in 2 years, or even slightly quicker if you already have prior learning at master's level. Now, this gives you flexibility and autonomy, and it lets our learners study at the pace that they wish to and in the way and the style that suits them best. We use a blended learning approach, and what we do is we combine online materials, but we also offer live webinars. And at the start of each module, when you begin your studies on your particular module that you're on at each semester, the tutor, the module leader, will talk to the group of students, and we'll try to plan these to work around times. Now, if for some reason you can't make one of the live webinars, these are always recorded, so you can go back to them as well. And all this is delivered through our bespoke learning environment, virtual learning environment, which is called My Dundee. We also ensure that everything is practice-based. So we've got strong links to your professional development, and it allows you to pick out interests that matter to you for your setting or possibly your future career development as well. So this could be everything from working in an early year setting, maybe supporting adult learners, maybe looking at innovative approaches to teaching and learning, maybe use of digital technology. It could be relating to additional support needs, inclusion, special educational needs. And there's a vast range of options that you can specialise in. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the subsequent slides. We're also recognised and accredited by the International Baccalaureate. So this is going to be of interest to some people. We have specific pathways for you that whether you've got experience in the International Baccalaureate or not, that you can take, which will then give you a dual qualification. So in addition to getting the full master's or the diploma or certificate, you may be eligible, depending on the route you take, for an IB certificate. And at the end of the programme, what you would do is you would apply to the International Baccalaureate, who would then check that you'd been a student on one of their accredited courses, which you would have been, and then they will issue you with that certificate. And the students that we work with are from all sectors of education around the world. So we've got a truly global and a very bright, vibrant global learning community. I always try to think of examples of the different countries, and every time I've worked with a group of students, we get somebody from a different country, we get somebody from a different sort of background in education. So it's really difficult for us to give a typical group of students that you'll be based with as well. But we do have a long track record, as Helen said, of working alongside Stafford. And I think currently we've got well over 100 students working on the Masters programme who have come through from the Stafford route and are part of the Stafford grouping, in addition to other students that are dotted around the world, not just in the UK. So I thought what I'd do as well is this slide just tells you a little bit about why you might want to study master's level. You've probably already done some research into this and you're already interested in taking your career to that next level through this extended study. For me, when I studied at master's level, which was more than 15 years ago now, when I was a teacher in a school before I came to work in the university, the big interest that I had was extending my knowledge, was becoming an expert in particular areas. And the masters that I undertook was one which was a generic masters in leading, learning and teaching. And at the beginning of that, I completed a module in reflective practice, and it got me to really think about how I was delivering teaching in the classroom. In addition to those specific pedagogical skills that you'll be developing, there's lots of transferable skills such as planning and research, and it gets you to think critically as well. Now, as I mentioned, I completed a master's myself quite a number of years ago, and it allowed me to develop my career firstly into leadership roles in school, and then move into the university, and then eventually complete a PhD as well and engage in research. The other thing that I found about master's study, and lots of our students do, is it'll help you change the way you view the world. So you will have a values basis from the way that you approach teaching and education in the wider world. But by engaging with different students, by engaging with research, by engaging with theory, it helps you develop and evolve that world view that you have. And that helps you connect with your students and those learners. And all the M.Ed teaching team have benefited from master's study themselves. They've all done it at different points, whether it was part-time or they did it full-time maybe they did it part of their teacher training, or they did it later in their careers. And the example I've got here, the image that I've got on here, you might recognise as a classroom image. This was one of the very first pieces of action research that I carried out as a master's student. And I was setting up my classroom for at the same time as I started my first module. And I'd always used the sort of standard layout for classrooms, either putting the classrooms in rows, the tables, or having them in little batches of tables together, maybe 4 students and pupils sitting together. So I decided to do a bit of investigation. I read the literature, and then I decided to try out some different classroom layouts. And what I've discovered was that from the research is that this U-shaped teaching layout for a classroom is really effective. Because what you're getting is you're getting the opportunity for the students to talk to somebody alongside them if they want some smaller group work, but they're also facing each other and you as the teacher at the front of the room. So I use that from time to time, but then as I did my own action research and discovered more about the way the classes I worked with preferred to access the learning, I would sometimes change it. I would discuss this with them. So even though I was teaching in an elementary or primary school classroom with children who might have been 9 or 10 years old, I talked to them about this idea of using research, about being evidence informed, about criticality. And they started thinking about this themselves as well. So then they had a say in the way that we laid the classroom out. And we'd sometimes change it depending on what subject I was teaching. Maybe I was doing something creative, maybe arts or possibly a design lesson. So we'd perhaps have a different layout for that than maybe if we were studying English, or we were doing literature or language, or maybe we were doing a math lesson or something like that as well. So that had a real impact on me from an early stage as a teacher, once I'd started engaging with master's level study. So I've already mentioned this idea of a specialism, and these are the different named awards that we've got. Now, the default named award that most people do when they undertake the full masters, the 3-year masters, would be an M.Ed in leading, learning and teaching. However, you might choose to pick certain modules that give you the named award in educational leadership, either international education, or inclusive education, or nursery and early education, or an M.Ed in TESOL, which is teaching English as a second language. So depending on the route that you can take through this modular program, you might be eligible for one of these named awards. But if not, you can just pick the modules you're interested in, and then you can have the generic leading, learning and teaching named award instead. So I've already mentioned a few times this idea of it being a modular-based course. So there are different exit points depending on how many modules you complete. So some people choose to engage with 2 modules, 2 30-credit modules, usually over a year, and this gets you to postgraduate certificate level. So then you would choose if you wanted to exit at that point with a PG cert, or you could continue on to the PG diploma, and that would be 4 modules, and that would be 120 credits. So that would be 4 modules of 30 credits, usually over a 2-year period. And then if you chose to continue and you wanted a full Master of Education, a full M.Ed, then you would do the final double module dissertation, which, because it involves a significant piece of research and culminates with an 11,000 word dissertation projects, which you would write up, we give you the full year to work on that. And some students choose to carry out their own research, maybe perhaps try and find out something from the students they're working with, maybe working with fellow teachers, maybe doing a large quantitative study perhaps, or maybe something that's using secondary data or literature based. So the core modules that, if you were doing the full 180 credits for the full M.Ed over 3 years, would be reflecting upon practice, research methods and dissertation. So reflecting upon practice and research methods, they're both 30 credit modules, and then the dissertation is a 60 credit module. So those of you who are good at maths, you'll be adding that up. So 30 and 30 and 60 takes you to the 120, and then 2 more optional modules would give you the remaining 60 modules, 60 credits, and remaining modules to give you the full M.Ed. And these are the optional modules that we have at the moment. We have international education, inclusive educator, well-being of children and young people, innovation education, leadership and organizational development, and also the specific modules that relates to either the IB pathway, the International Baccalaureate pathway, or the TESOL pathway. We're also, this is happening this week, we're going through an accreditation event within the university where we have the possibility of the inclusion of a sustainability module. We've not run this before, so if we get that signed off, that might be an option from next year as well. So these are the various named pathways that we have. And if you were doing the named award in leading, learning and teaching, you would pick any optional modules plus the 3 core modules. But this is the various combination of the modules. Now, you don't need to remember this. You don't need to write all this down. This is all available on the university website, or Stafford and Helen would be able to give you some advice on this, or myself at the University of Dundee. But if we take as an example, inclusive education, which is for people interested in special educational needs or well-being of young people, you would select inclusive educator or the well-being module, another optional module, and you would specialize in this idea of inclusive education in your dissertation. And that would give you significant specialism to then graduate with an M.Ed in inclusive education. So that's just to give you an example of some of the options that you might have. Now, I've already touched on this idea of the dual qualification with the International Baccalaureate. And we are one of the only universities in the UK and one of the only universities in the world that offer this option for you to complete the International Baccalaureate, the IB Educator Certificates. So these are the certificates that you can complete for working in the IB sector. Now, you'll notice from the 3 options that are listed here, 2 of them don't require any experience in the International Baccalaureate setting. So this would be the IB Certificate in Leadership Practice, which is a certificate level qualification. So that's just 2 modules. And then the Advanced Certificate in Leadership, which would be a full M.Ed, so you do 180 credits. Now, neither of those require IB experience, but what they would require you to do is to complete the International Baccalaureate modules as part of the full M.Ed or the certificate. Now, the third option here is if you're already working within an IB school, you need 3 years of experience in that setting. And this is the Advanced Certificate in Learning and Teaching Research as well. So if you're already working in the IB setting, or you have 3 years prior experience, maybe from a previous job, you might be interested in that one there. Now, there's no extra charge for the taking these particular routes. So it's the same fee structure as we have for all the other M.Ed routes. What you would do at the end of it is, once you've completed, you would apply to International Baccalaureate for the certificate, and I think they might have a small administration fee or charge, which basically processes the certificate for you. But for the studying, it doesn't matter whether you take the IB route or whether you take the one of the other named awards, which we've talked about as well. So that might be something worth considering. So what does it look like if you've decided, yep, this is what you want to do? Obviously, it's going to be, as you will know, as teachers and educators, if you're going to be studying, you need to put a bit of time into this. So what we say usually for a part-time student is the semesters only last 17 weeks. Now, a reason for that is that we give a break between the semester so that you can get your assignments assessed and you can get feedback to you. And obviously, you're working full-time, you probably want a rest. If you've got a module that finishes and another one starts, it won't really give you a break. So you would start at one of the entry points. You would complete a 30 credit module over 17 weeks. And then you'd be a short break of about 6 to 9 weeks before the next semester starts. And then you complete the 60 credits in 46 weeks. Now, we recommend about 17.5 hours study a week. So anything between 15 hours and 20 hours. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, but when you factor in, you might be engaging with the virtual learning environment, you might be completing a task that's been set for you, you might attend one of the webinars for an hour or so, or an hour and a half. You might be engaging in professional conversations, possibly with your peers, maybe in your work setting that you're in at the moment. You might be doing some reading for an assignment. Then that 15 to 20 hours quickly adds up. And some people choose to spread that out across the full 17 weeks. Other people choose perhaps to condense it. They may know they've got a holiday coming up from school, maybe got a long weekend, and they maybe use that time at the weekends to do it. So it's a flexible program that allows you to work at your own speed as well. Now, if you didn't want to take the normal route, the part-time route, which is anything up to 3 years, then you might choose to take the fast-track route, and this allows you to complete 2 30-credit modules in 17 weeks. So the notional study time, again, as you're good at your maths, we'll be able to see it's 35 hours. Now, my recommendations is if you're working full-time in a school, which could be 40, 45 hours, and you're trying to study 2 modules at once, that's a lot of work. And sometimes people find that quite difficult. But if you've signed up for the fast track option, you can always come off the fast track option later, although we'd rather you give that some thought before you start. Now, the thing to point out is we don't have a fast track option for the dissertation. And our reason for that is you do need time to carry out your study, your research, your investigation, whether it's collecting data, whether it's getting ethical approval for that, whether it's designing a study using secondary data or literature. So the fast track option doesn't apply to the dissertation because we want to give you as long enough time as possible to succeed in that. You will be allocated a dissertation supervisor who will give you support. You are not just left to it for the year, and they will guide you along the way. They'll have tutorials with you and they'll help you out. And the modules before dissertation stage are the same. You get this support from a tutor and a module leader who are very experienced and specialists in the area that you're studying at that particular time. Now, we don't offer a full-time in-country option through Stafford. We do have one, but we're not answering questions about that today. So I just wanted to clear that up in case anybody was thinking, oh, this is a full-time course where I'm coming to Dundee to study. Although that option is there, we're not offering that, and we're not answering about that today. So if you had queries about that, you could look on the website later for that. So the support that we give our students, as well as student life being important for people who are studying in person, who come to the university in Dundee and live here, we also want to support our online learners. So we got an accolade for best university in Scotland, and this is down to the fact we have dedicated academic advisors. We have an advisory study system where somebody will be allocated to you who can give you advice, give you help, give you support with anything related to academic matters and potentially personal matters as well. We have a dedicated counselling service and also a disability service. So if when you started your studies, you thought you might need additional help, maybe accessing materials, maybe around the way in which we present materials for you, maybe you need to use a screen reader, then the disability service can help with that. We've also got an international advice service who are experts in supporting people who are remote learners. And we also have access to academic skills and English language support. So if you've not studied at university level, master's level, at all, or not studied recently, or maybe you're feeling a little bit anxious about maybe writing in English, which might not be your first language, we can give that support to you, and we're very proud of that level of support. And this additional support sits alongside the support that our library service gives, which is another extremely highly regarded, almost internationally renowned support that we have at Dundee. So very quickly, the entry requirements, which you might have some questions about. We need you to have an undergraduate degree. We do say on our website that this is a second-class degree, so a 2-2 degree, but obviously it depends where you did your first degree. And we're conscious that some countries don't have an honours system, or they may be, say you're in the US, you might have the grade point average system. So it's always worth inquiring, as long as you've got studies to a degree level and you have the requisite IELTS requirements in English, that's 6.5 or equivalent, and you've got some teaching or educational experience. And it could be working in a school, it could be doing some tutoring or some mentoring, it could be doing pupil support or learner support. So as long as you've got that professional education experience, that'll give you an opportunity to reflect and to situate and to base your learning and your inquiry on that prior experience as well. And then if this experience was not current, that's okay as well. It just needs to be in a relevant setting. So if you've got any queries about that, we can answer them at the end, or you can get in touch to ask about it. Now, we mentioned earlier about coming to Dundee for graduation. It's a great event to come to. So whether you've completed the certificate, the diploma, or the full masters, we love to see people. We love to see them in person, especially when we've been meeting you online, or we've been sending you emails, and we've been marking your assignments and supporting you to see you here to graduate. And these run in June and then again in November. So depending when you finished your course and had your final piece of work assessed, and that was passed and there was no problems with that, you would then be eligible for the next of the graduations. Registry, which is our administration's department, will get in touch to say that you may be eligible. It's always worth double checking, because it has to be ratified by something called the Board of Examiners. So we just mentioned that now, because you might be planning ahead, thinking, right, I'm going to graduate on this date, but we do need to make sure it ties in with these various graduation dates to get you to the next graduation. So just because you handed an assignment in last week in May, and the graduation is June, that it might not be that you meet that graduation deadline. It might be the following one, there might be the November one as well. Now, when you have finished, we are able to issue letters of attainment. So even if you've not gone through the full graduation ceremony, we can say that you have completed the course if you need that for a job as well. But we can't provide the degree certificate, the master's certificate, until you've formally graduated. It's just one of these rules that universities have, that once you've gone through that particular process, you get your certificate issued. And it's a great day when it comes, because everyone remembers their graduation, whether it's undergraduate, master's level, and it's a fantastic occasion. People who come along in person are able to wear their gowns. If you've already got an undergraduate degree, which you will have done, you can choose to wear those particular colours as well when you go through, or you can choose to wear the colours of the University of Dundee. And as I say, there's a nice garden party where the staff come along, and usually it's certainly anyway in June, it's usually a gorgeous day here in Dundee. November, it can sometimes be a bit cooler, as you can imagine. So one of the real advantages of doing this once you've graduated is the employability. We've got really good rankings globally for our graduate employment. Obviously, most of you will have worked in education or currently working in education, but you can continue to access our careers service up to 5 years after graduation. Online learners, distance learners have access to this as well, and we have an allocated careers advisor for the education school. And M.Ed graduates have gone on to all sorts of things. We've got people gone into leadership roles in schools, gone to work in policy, administration, maybe governmental roles, maybe research-based roles. Many students have gone on to work in universities later, for example, PhD study as well. And later tonight, actually, I'm having a call with a graduate from the M.Ed who was working in an international school in Thailand and then relocated to the UK and now works in educational design, has become a real expert in artificial intelligence. So myself and this M.Ed graduate, we're having a call later to see how we can maybe do some writing together. We've published a few papers together and we've worked together on the back of their expertise that they developed on the Masters as well. So there are lots of great opportunities for you to continue your journey once you've completed the Masters. So we're coming to the end of the presentation, but I thought we'd finish up with some with a photo there of some of the Dundee graduates and some feedback that we've had. So student here commenting on the professionalism and in particular reflective practice. And many of you will be familiar with this already, but it allows you to take your teaching to the next level. Certainly something that I found as a master's student when I was teaching. Also carrying out a research project of inquiry into your own practice helps you plan where you can improve and helps your learners benefit from it. Positive comment there about the support from our staff, and all the staff, as I said, have been a master's students. They've got expertise in a particular area, and if there was a named award you were interested in, we could even put you in touch with that member of staff that teaches on that module to give you some idea about what that involved. And as this last quote here says, the tutors are dedicated, they're efficient, and also we pride ourselves on being very welcoming and friendly. Dundee's a smallish or small to mid-sized university in UK terms, and you've perhaps looked at a few different universities maybe, and I think this smaller side gives us this opportunity to really make connections with the students. And as I've said, I'm talking to somebody later in today who graduated several years ago that I've stayed in touch with, and we still work together as well. So I think that connection that you build up with your tutors and with the academic staff and vice versa that we get with the students and the graduates is a real selling point. So all the information on tuition fees, I should have updated this, sorry. This is saying that we're accepting applications for October, November 25, it should be, but I think we're still in time for the April start as well. So Stafford Global will have the details on this as well, and Helen will be able to give more guidance on that. And if you've got any questions at all about the M.Ed, about the certificates, diplomas, or the full masters, whether it's about the IB route, whether it's about the teaching, about the assessment, feel free to take my details, drop me an email, and myself or one of the team can also have a quick call and a quick chat about things with you. So I think, Helen, that might be everything I wanted to cover there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. And Dr. Richard is actually quite correct. We still have some time for the April intake if you do want to apply as early as now, but you're still very welcome to send us your documentation for the October intake if you do wish. Yes, let's try and actually get you in as early as possible. All right, so I have been looking at some of the questions that have come through whilst Dr. Richard was doing the presentation. Okay, and our first question is from Philip. Now, Philip has a master's degree in political science, and he's obviously, teaching in that field, but he hasn't got his bachelor degree. So the question is, will he be accepted into the program?
It certainly sounds, without seeing all the details of the application, I can't say for certain, but it certainly sounds like you're suitable to apply for the programme, undoubtedly. The undergraduate level of study that's required is so that you can access master's learning. If you've already accessed master's learning, I think that would prepare you very well for this. So a suggestion would be to look at the application requirements, put those in, and if you wanted a separate conversation about that, you could probably go through Stafford in the first instance. Helen, would that be right? And then we could give some advice and some guidance on putting that application in and making sure that you demonstrate that. If you've got experience of working in education setting, in a school or something similar, and you've also studied to master's level already, I think you'd be an excellent example of an applicant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage applicants to make sure that their CV is very strong, as well as that personal statement that has to be submitted. Really, as Dr. Richards said, demonstrating how you can actually fit into the program and what you have been doing, academically. Teaching, etc., etc. Okay, good. And a question that has come from Hussein, which is actually quite interesting. Dr. Richard, can you please advise what is the difference between IB and a non-IB route?
Okay, so the way that the course works, it's got the 3 different years and the 3 exit points. It's got the postgraduate certificate exit point, the diploma exit point, and the full master's program. Now, within that framework, that structure, you've got different modules you can sort of follow your way through. Now, if you just sort of randomly selected 2 optional modules, you would lead with the leading learning and teaching, and it's unlikely that that would fit the requirements for the IB route, unless you were doing the certificate with a 3 years experience, because then what you would do is you could pick any route, but you would make sure that all your studies were focused on examples from the IB, and your tutor would give you advice on that and guidance on that. But if you weren't taking that route and you wanted the certificates that effectively give you that IB experience, then you would pick a specific route through. And again, if you got in touch with us, we could tell you a little bit more about that. But the people that teach on that, they're really experienced of working with people in the IB setting or in the IB sector. Myself and my colleague, who's also called Helen, by the way, we have several Helens. If you come to study with us, you'll realise. But my colleague Helen Cunningham, who is the person who leads the IB route, worked in international schools herself in a variety of different places. Has got experience in Singapore, in Italy, I think in Egypt as well, and has that really big, broad international experience as well. So if you were going for the IB route, it would be a specific route that you would follow, and that's so the IB know that we're giving you the preparation to teach in that particular setting and to get that qualification. Otherwise, if you're not interested in that, you just want to do the generic masters, then you can pick any of the named awards or any of the routes that run through that. So hopefully that's explained it, but if not, please do get in touch, because we understand it is quite a complex thing to understand.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, I do understand the concepts. So, Shane, if you do want to contact us, you're very welcome to, or as Dr. Richard said, you're very welcome to email him directly, and he'll be able to explain that to you as well. Okay, yeah. And Kat has a question regarding IB. She has been working in an IB school for about 3 years now. And the question is, can I take all 3 IB certificates?
Right. That's a really good question, actually. I'm trying to think through. Do you know what? It's possible you can. I'm trying to work through in my mind what you would take. What you would do is you'd follow the route for the 2 certificates without the experience, but you could probably apply for the other one as well. So without being 100% sure, I can't see why you couldn't. There's a double negative in there, so I'm pretty confusing you. So in other words, I would imagine it's possible. I think probably Helen Cunningham would be the best person to advise on that. I don't know of any examples where someone's done that, but we do encourage people who would like to do those certificates. I think from having worked with people from the IB sector and having met them at the international conference last year in Budapest, with a 3 years experience, if you completed the one that's the advanced certificate where you need that experience, that would effectively be at a higher level than the others. So once you've got that, there perhaps wouldn't be the necessity to have the other ones there. So I think Helen would be the best person to ask. And the advantage of not doing all 3, of just doing the most sort of highest regarded one, would be you could then choose modules that you were interested in as well. So you're getting the most out of the experience. So yeah, I think it might be possible. We can double check that with Helen for you if you want to drop us an email afterwards, or maybe if Helen's got your details.
Yes, absolutely.
But I would imagine that from somebody as an employer in an IB school, having that advanced certificate with your 3 years experience would be the thing that they would be really impressed to see.
Yeah. Karen, what I will do, as Dr. Richard has mentioned, is I will contact Helen at the university, and I will ask her that question, and then I will definitely get back to you on that once we get the feedback from her, because it really is a very, very interesting question. I think this is the first question I've heard in quite some time.
No, yeah, I don't think that's that one before. So
Yes,
we really do like the IB route, and I've learned an awful lot of working with people from international school settings and the IB settings. And sometimes the university encourages us, "Oh, well, you're offering something extra. Should we be charging extra for this?" And we don't. It doesn't. It costs the university to accredit and to go through the international baccalaureate accreditation process. But we think, we don't want that two-tiered system. There is the cost at the end of it, which the IB charge for the administration of the certificate, but from a point of view of fees, there's no difference. It's the same. So if it suits you and it's what you want to do, we'd encourage you to have a good think about that. Yeah.
Good. And Mavis has a question about module teaching sessions.
Great.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so each module is delivered slightly differently, but your typical module would begin. So I'll use the reflecting upon practice module, which is the one that most students start with. What you would do there is you'd go through the application process, you'd be accepted, you'd receive communication from Stafford and ourselves, would let you know when it was starting, and then the module leader would reach out to you and say, right, the first teaching session is coming up. And they might ask you to have to log into My Dundee, which is a virtual learning environment, and you would become familiar with the layout of that. And because we're educators, we pride ourselves on how we design that area, how we make the most of the tools available. So that static content, that asynchronous content, is available for you at any time. So you could log in at 9 o'clock at night, at 7 o'clock in the morning, before you go to work, and you can access those materials. And that virtual learning environment module area will include everything from a welcome video from your module leader. It will include details of the core reading, the resource list. So that includes things like research articles. It includes things like textbooks that you might need to use, or chapters from textbooks, but also other literature and other sources. Like it might be particular TED Talks that we think would be of value. Now, that's all the asynchronous content which you can access when you want. And then there'll be scheduled teaching sessions. And these will be delivered again through the virtual learning environment. So you'll log in and it uses a software a little bit like we're using now, a little bit like Zoom, a bit like Teams, where you can join your fellow classmates, and the tutor or tutors will lead the session. They will take you through maybe a short presentation. And often there'll be a discussion element where they'll be asking you questions or ask you for your input as well. Possibly if it's a bigger group, we might utilise breakout rooms as well. And in some cases, there might be some follow-up activities on the back of that teaching, or there might be some sort of discussion board that you could engage with. So there's a range of different methods and processes used for delivering of the teaching. So hopefully that answer that okay for you.
Yeah, I think that was quite good there. Thank you, Dr. Richard. Okay,
I probably should have forgot to mention the assessment as well. And at the end of each module, there will be an assessment set for you. Now, normally it's a 4,000-word essay, but in some modules it might have an option for a presentation, which you could do live. There is a module where there is a more sort of creative approach, where you might produce an artifact or some sort of maybe lesson planning artifacts that would be part of the assignment. In the reflective practice module, we encourage people to keep a reflective diary. So the assessments also differ slightly. And again, if you wanted to look on the website, it does tell you a little bit more about that for each individual module.
Right, good. And this question is regarding the progression into an M.Ed. She wants to actually just the postgraduate certificate and exit, because that is really what is required by her school at the moment. And her question is, how long is the distance between that and me coming back to the M.Ed? How many years does the university allow me to take a break?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And because of the modular nature, we have two options. One is that you leave, that you graduate, maybe with a certificate or the diploma, so with the 2 modules or the 4 modules, and then you apply again, and you apply using a request for recognition of prior learning. And effectively what you're doing there is you're sort of cashing in, you're giving in your certificate or your diploma to rejoin at that latter stage. We normally say 5 years or so in that gap in between, but if it was beyond that, you could inquire and you could see. So we do get sometimes people inquiring whose the gap in study has been slightly longer. The other option is that you register for the full program, and then you can take something called temporary withdrawal. So you might say circumstances change, maybe family circumstances change, maybe you relocate country, maybe the work circumstances change, and you can get what's called a temporary withdrawal from studies, where you could maybe take a break for 6 months. So there's different ways of approaching it. And that temporary withdrawal, or that option for extensions, also applies when you're studying normally. So again, maybe something happens, you're in a school, an inspection takes place, or there's a change in staffing, or maybe you're leading a team and something comes along. You can get in touch with your advisor of studies and they will give you guidance and help through that. So there's different mechanisms to allow you to do it, but we would normally say probably return within 5 years because of the currency of the content that you've studied, and the research you've engaged with in the literature. It just makes sure that you're staying up to date. So
excellent, good. And Bonga's question, Bonga's actually located in Kenya.
oh, wow.
The question is, I am busy teaching TESOL, okay, and the question, what would be the difference between the program that I've already studied and your M.Ed in TESOL?
Okay, there are a range of certificates, and there's things like CELTA and TESOL, where they very specifically train you to deliver that teaching. They're more similar to the sort of teacher training, the PGCs that you might have heard of, where you have a placement element to it. It's very practically focused. We still on the M.Ed make the connection to practice focus, but it's a master's level qualification. So those certificates that you may have done previously may have been the equivalent to undergraduate study. So our expert, our tutor on this, Maksud, he researches in this area. He's highly published in this area. So as well as it being practice focused, there's this opportunity to extend your knowledge, maybe to carry out practitioner research, maybe a practitioner inquiry, to take in the same way, if you're an elementary teacher or you're a secondary science teacher, maybe, to take your TESOL experience and expertise to that next level. So there will be, having that background, having done a TESOL or a CELTA or equivalent qualification or certificate will be really valuable, but this is a master's level qualification. So it's a master's with a specialism in TESOL. And you could also focus on your dissertation on it. If you're very sure that's your area that you want to work in for the number of years ahead, and you want to maybe develop your management leadership experience in that area, then using your dissertation as an opportunity to explore that further, for either for you personally or for the school you're working in or the company you're working for, would be a real advantage as well. So yeah, so there are similarities, but it's a different level qualification, I think is the short answer to that.
Good. So Bonga, I hope that actually answers that question. And James's question is, he's a little bit undecided at the moment as to what specialist route he really wants to focus in. So the question is, can I actually change my specialist route halfway through my studies?
The quick answer is yes. We obviously try to get people on the right track to start with, but yeah, we have a system built in where your advisor of studies or your support person, you could contact them, whether it's through Stafford, through academic advisor through Stafford, or whether it's through the university directly. As long as we've not started the next module, all the modules run each semester. Now, in some cases, there might be a small group of students, maybe 6 or 7 students. In other cases, it might be a slightly bigger module, 10, 15 students. But we do have that flexibility to move people between those. So yeah, it will just be a case of getting in touch, having a quick chat with your advisor of studies to make sure it was the right decision for you as well, because we obviously don't want somebody changing every semester and every changing backwards and forwards, because we want you to have the best possible experience. But yeah, there is an option to do that. So say maybe you started focusing in on TESOL and you've started with a reflecting upon practice module, and then maybe your circumstances have changed and you've perhaps been promoted and you think, actually, I would like to take the leadership route instead, I'd like to do the leadership module and the leadership focused study instead, we'd be able to make that shift and we'd be able to change you across, or vice versa, move the other way as well. So yeah, there is the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. And James has got a follow-up question to that. And
Yeah.
is it possible then to study 2 specializations at the same time if I like both of them?
So that's a good question. What I would have said is yeah, we used to have no problem with that whatsoever. That you'd almost get towards the end and you could request your effectively named award, assuming you had enough of the specialism for that named award. But you can only be given one named award. Now, the only caveat I'll say around that is I mentioned earlier we're going through an internal university review that takes place every 5 years. So it's dependent on what happens in that, and that's taking place this week. So again, my advice around that would be, once you know you're applying, you're given the opportunity to choose your modules, just ask that question, double check with your advisor of studies or with your Stafford representative, and we can give you some guidance on that. But yeah.
And I actually have one last question that's come from Fatima, and her question is, does the degree certificate state online distance learning, as this is not accepted by some ministries in some countries?
Yeah, some jurisdictions, some government agencies. Yeah, that's a really great question. It does not say anywhere on the certificate that it is online or distance learning. And we've been asked this question before. It's a bit of a surprise to us, and we think it might be because some of the universities or colleges, they offer, and we know these exist, they offer courses where you can study in your own time, but you don't get that contact, say, with a tutor. You don't get the same level of perhaps assessment that we would require of you as well. And then you get that certificate. And I think this is why certain ministries might be trying to avoid that, and they do want you to have had this in-depth engagement with studies, which is one of the reasons that we do say it's quite a significant time commitment. And we say, 15 to 20 hours study where you're engaging with the research, or you're maybe having discussions with your tutor or your peers, you may be engaging with discussion boards, that kind of thing. So yeah, it doesn't say anywhere on the certificates, we can reassure about that. And we do want to make sure that the standard of teaching that you're receiving and the learning you're engaging with and the level that you're being qualified to is in line with masters in other universities and other countries around the world as well. So yeah, so it's although it's delivered over 3 years usually for the full masters, the content is the same and the expectations are the same as if you were here full time in Dundee completing the course. And I mentioned that in passing that we do have that route as well, but the 2 programs are the same program, so it is the equivalent as you coming here. But obviously, for financial constraints, personal constraints, not everybody is able to move to another country for a year to study as a master's in that way. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, good. And there's just one last question that has come through, but I'll answer that one. This is a question from Bako, basically wanting to know the total cost of the program. So Bako, it's very important that you get in touch with us because we do have a very flexible payment plan for you on a monthly basis, but it also really does depend on which level you are going to be entering the program as well. So it's really quite difficult to give you an answer right now. So I will make sure that your personal academic consultant gets in contact with you tomorrow, and then we'll be able to advise you accordingly. Okay, good.
I fully understand that, as I've been a teacher myself, and that it's that a financial cost of funding your own study. It's a big commitment and it's a big decision to make. So it's good that people are thinking about that. What I would say is, from my experience of having been a teacher working in the classroom and not really thinking much, I did a teaching qualification that was very vocational, very practical, not thinking much about research. That once I started engaging with theory to that deeper level, it did make a big difference to the way which I taught. It also opened up doors for me. I mentioned that I got a leadership role, partly as a result of it. I then later looked at moving into academia and doing more research from a point of view of working at the university too, while still getting a chance to teach. So it is a massive commitment. We understand that, but there are a lot of benefits from it, and things like the transferable skills and the experience as well. You know, if you're unsure, talking to people maybe in social media, in different sort of groups that have undertaken master's study, maybe people who've been former students of the university, I'm sure they would speak highly of the experience. So yeah.
Absolutely. And we can also look at, chatting about starting on the postgraduate certificate level and then moving yourself up into the diploma level and the full master's. So there are really various options that we can look at, and to basically suit anyone's financial needs. Okay, good, excellent. So I have managed to actually put all the questions together. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Richard. It was really very good, a lovely presentation, and we had lovely questions coming through this evening. And as I've mentioned before, we are currently open for the April intake, so there are a few places still available, but we can also look at your application for the October intake as well. Thank you very much for joining me, everyone, this evening. It was lovely having you all, and again, very nice to see you again, Dr. Richard, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Cheerio.